You've just entered the no delusion zone. I'm DeBatto. Well, it's been a couple of days since I made my last video. Uh, I needed that time to regroup. Obviously, you all know that in America, we lost the election on November 5th. When I say we, I mean not just America, but the entire Western world of democracies everywhere. As of November 5th, 2024, American democracy is dead. The constitutional form of government, the constitutional republic, is no more. America, the American democracy, the American idea died. It was born July 4th, 1776, and passed away rather unceremoniously on November 5th, 2024. The worst possible American, and I call him that with a heavy heart, the worst possible person who could occupy the Oval Office in the United States has been elected president again. And of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump. The American people, over 50%, about 51 point something percent when this is all said and done, have decided that they want a chronic narcissist, convicted felon, misogynist, racist, neo-Nazi, criminal, loathsome, chronic liar, anti-democracy, anti-science, anti-education, just horrible human being. They want him to be their president. A person who said on the very first day he will be a dictator. A person who has said on more than one occasion that he will shred the Constitution. The Constitution, the document that I and many millions of other Americans put our lives on the line for on the battlefield with our military. And this is from a draft dodger, by the way, who never served a minute in the military because he's too rich. He paid off his doctors. And it really pisses me off that American military veterans and current military service people voted for him, and they did in the millions. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. How you can look yourself in the mirror, American military service people, whether currently serving or veterans, and vote for such a scumbag like Trump is beyond me. A person who criticizes, ridicules veterans, disabled veterans, deceased veterans who died on the battlefields of America. He makes fun of them. He asks, what's in it for them? Calls them chumps. And you, American military service people, love him, like him, voted for him. What the fuck is wrong with you? And if you want to take that up with me, write to me, because I'd really like to know. Actually, I don't. Don't get a hold of me, because I really don't want to know. It's pathetic. It disgusts me that anyone who served in uniform would vote for this loathsome piece of crap. You know, of course, a lot of people of all stripes have opined on the horrible day that we had on November 5th. And I would just like to quote from two of them, two people that I kind of respect. They're not maybe top of mind with me, but they wrote two op-ed pieces, two short articles that I want to share with you because they do embrace much of how I feel. The first one is George Conway. George Conway is a former Republican, now independent. He may actually be a Democrat, I'm not sure. But he's very anti-Trump. He's one of the original anti-Trumpers. He's an attorney. He served in Republican administrations going way back for decades. Smart man. He's now a regular contributor on news programs all over the TV and the internet. So, George Conway. We knew or should have known for years about Donald Trump. The man elected president last night is a depraved and brazen pathological liar, a shameless con man, a sociopathic criminal, a man who has no moral or social conscience, empathy or remorse. He has no respect for the Constitution and the laws he will swear to uphold. And on top of all of that, he exhibits emotional and cognitive deficiencies that seem to be intensifying and that will only make his turpitude worse. He represents everything we should aspire not to be, and everything we should teach our children not to emulate. The only hope is that he's utterly incompetent, and even that is a double-edged sword because his incompetence often can do as much harm as his malevolence. His government will be filled with corrupt grifters, spiteful maniacs, and morally bankrupt sycophants who will follow in his example and carry his directives out because that's who they are and want to be. I say this all not in anger, but in deep and profound sorrow. For centuries, the United States has been a beacon of democracy and reasoned self-government, in part because the framers understood the dangers of demagogues and saw fit to construct a system with safeguards to keep such men from undermining it, and because our people and our leaders, out of respect for the common good and the people of this country, adhere to its rules and norms. The system was never perfect, but it inched forward in its own betterment, albeit in fits and starts, but in the end, the system the framers set up, and indeed all constitutional regimes, however well designed, cannot protect a free people from themselves. My own hope and belief about what would transpire last night was sadly, and profoundly wrong. Like many, I have the emotional and intellectual flaw, if that's what it is, of assuming that people are wiser and more decent than they actually turned out to be. I feel chastened, distraught about my apparently naive view of human nature. I dare not predict the future again, particularly as it comes to elections and other forms of mass behavior. But I dare say I fear we shall see a profound degradation in the ability of this nation to govern itself rationally and fairly, with freedom and political equality under the rule of law. Because that is not actually a prediction, it's a logical deduction based on the words and deeds of the president-elect, his enablers and his supporters, and a long and often sorry record of human history. Let us brace ourselves. And I'll go one step beyond that and say, that's not just who his supporters and sycophants really are. That's who we are, Americans. We have shown ourselves to be not very exceptional at all. In fact, we're less than folks of many, many other democracies around the world. We tend to be, in my opinion, more naive, more stupid, more gullible, more prone to cult behavior and a respect for demagogues and dictators. We seem to thrive on that. And the only thing that's held us back for these 248 years were that we were blessed. We were blessed to be a country that had great leaders, not always great, but great enough to respect the rule of law, the Constitution, and keep down the simmering hostility, racism, and stupidity of the population, which showed itself in all of its dishonor on November 5th, 2024. One more short piece that I'd like to read, and this is from someone that I don't always actually agree with. He's a progressive, and I am not a progressive, believe me. This is Tom Nichols. He writes both for the New York Times and the Atlantic. This piece just was published in the Atlantic. It's very short, but I do agree with it. Trump's opponents are now muttering about the choice of Tim Walz, the influence of the Russians, the role of the right-wing media, and whether President Joe Biden should not have stepped aside in favor of Harris. Even the old saw about economic anxiety is making a comeback. These explanations all have some merit, but mostly they miss the point. Yes, some voters will stubbornly believe that presidents magically control the price of basic goods. Others have genuine concerns about immigration and gave in to Trump's booming call of fascism and nativism. And some of them were just never going to vote for a woman, much less a black woman. But in the end, a majority of American voters chose Trump because they wanted what he was selling. A nonstop reality show of rage and resentment. Some Democrats, still gripped by the lure of wonkery, continue to scratch their heads over which policy proposals might have unlocked more votes. But that was always a mug's game. Trump voters never cared about policies, and he rarely gave them anyway. Choosing to be eaten by a shark rather than electrocuted might be a personal preference, but it's not a policy. His rallies involved long rants about the way he's been treated, like a giant therapy session or a huge family gathering around a bellowing, impaired grandpa. And it ends there. And I'll just add one thing to this short piece. What he's talking about, and what some others have talked about recently, is Trump's advocating of illiberal populism, meaning that he skated around the laws, basically, and he was voted in legally in a democratic system through populism, meaning reaching out to people through, as this article said, rage, basically rage, getting them angry, making them think that they're not equal, even if they were, making the problems of the economy, of prices, of immigration, of national security, of foreign aid, of healthcare and everything else much, much worse than it is. Calling America a garbage can, talking about the crime that doesn't exist in most cities, talking about Puerto Rico as a floating garbage can, and on and on and on. They didn't want to hear about policies. MAGA doesn't want to hear about the fact that unemployment is at its lowest level in decades, and that the Black population has historic low levels of unemployment, that under Biden, more factories were relocated and built in the United States than under Trump, that Trump increased the budget more than any president in the last few decades. And I could go on. As this article said, MAGA didn't want to hear any of that. Jesus could have come down from heaven and told them to vote for Democrats, and they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have believed him. They would have called him fake news. They would have, because they're part of a cult. They're part of a cult of rage and animosity and anti-science, anti-education, anti-democracy, and at their root, in their hearts, and I really mean this, apparently the majority, at least 51% of the American people, want a dictator. Not only that, they want a Christian, an Orthodox Christian theocracy dictatorship. They want a dictatorship run by a national Orthodox Christian church. Totally unconstitutional, but hey, when you rip up the Constitution, it doesn't exist anymore. So they've made their sentiments clear, and I'm probably going to be one of the few people on social media that are going to blame the American public, the American electorate, more than I'm blaming the Democrats, who definitely shoulder a lot of this blame. Kamala Harris was not a great candidate. The Democrats should have had a primary, and chosen the best candidate. Let's go back beyond that. Joe Biden should have never run for a second term. He promised us he was an interim go-between between Trump and the next Democratic nominee. He lied. He didn't do that. He obviously ran for a second term, and the Democrats hid his deteriorating cognitive ability to us for years, lied about it. And if he wasn't forced out kicking and screaming, he would have stayed. in the election. He would have stayed and been beaten even worse than Kamala Harris. So I blame Joe Biden. I blame the Democrats, but mostly I blame the American electorate, MAGA. And it's not just MAGA. That's the thing. To get to 51 or 52%, Trump had to attract non-MAGA. I'm talking Democrats. And of course, a lot of independents. I think 20% of black men voted for Trump. I think 60% of Latinos voted for Trump. Oh, and that's great. Latinos, what are you going to do when it comes to round up your relatives, your illegal, undocumented relatives, and puts them in concentration camps and ships them home, or doesn't even ship them anywhere, leaves them in there to die? What do you think about that, Latinos? What a great move. How about the Muslim Americans in Michigan and elsewhere who voted for Trump to vote against Kamala Harris for supporting Israel against Palestine, allegedly? Well, guess what? Bibi Netanyahu thanks you because Trump is his best friend and Gaza is going to disappear. The Palestinians there are dead. They're going to die. Trump is going to give Netanyahu all the weapons and ammunition he needs to totally raze Gaza to the ground. And part of that, a big part of it, is thanks to you, American Muslims. I hope you're really proud of yourself. Morons, idiots, imbeciles. I'm angry, obviously. The American people of all stripes, whether it's American Muslims, Latinos, black women, black men, suburban women, we're all the women who wanted to vote against Trump for the ending of Roe v. Wade. No, there's enough blame to go around with the American people. I'm embarrassed to be an American today. I'm disgusted. But I'll tell you what, and this is going to be the title of this podcast. This ain't over. I'll say it right now. I think I said it before, but I'll say it again. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to be one of those celebrities or just any other American that says, oh, Trump won, I'm leaving the country, I'm moving out of America. No, this is my country. I was born here. I fought for this country and wrote a check to the United States government payable up to and including my life. And I'm not leaving, not without a fight. No, I'm going to stay right here. And I'm going to do as much as I can through this podcast, through this YouTube channel. I'm going to try, if possible, to organize. And I'm going to reach out to people here right now. Veterans, the ones that have a head on their shoulders, sane veterans that want to do something about this travesty, this catastrophe. Contact me here. Contact me here. Let's talk. And I'll say something I've never said anywhere on social media or the internet. If there's any political party, Democrats, independents, or whatever, that actually want someone that gives a shit, that can talk like this, like I am right now, and not mamby-pamby and threaten you with a subpoena like the Democrats do, but it's willing to fight against the Republicans, really fight for the average American, the real average Americans, contact me. Contact me here through this channel. I'll talk to you. I'll think about it. I hate politics, but I hate losing our democracy more to these loathsome pieces of garbage. So again, I'm putting it out to you, to veterans. Talk to me. I'm talking to political parties, whether it's the Democratic Party, independents, the Vote for Veterans Party, or anyone else that has the guts to challenge the Republicans 2 years from now and to fight against them now. So here's the title of this podcast. Rise of the Resistance. Yeah, it was a name of a Star Trek movie and actually a pretty great ride over in Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World. Rise of the Resistance. I'm now part of the resistance. Look at this face. Hear my voice. This is a voice from the resistance. That's all for now. I will be back with more of these, maybe later today, but certainly tomorrow and every day if possible. So I reach out to you again, contact me. And as always, I ask more than ever now If you like what you hear, you want to hear more of it, you want to be part of the resistance, you want to speak out against this travesty, this nightmare, please hit the subscribe button. Please. It's more important now than ever, post-election. Also, go to buymeacoffee.com and buy me a coffee. I'll be posting my link to Patreon. I'm going to need it because I think YouTube may or may not continue to monetize me. They're becoming very politicized, and who knows? So I'm going to depend on you for subscribing, for buying me a coffee, for Patreon, and very, very soon I'm going to be posting a merch link. For those of you that might be interested, I have a whole line of No Delusion Zone merch coming online very soon, and I think many of you will be interested. So, again, thanks a lot, and as always, especially after post-election, you take care, stay safe, and stay sane.